They're the stuff to watch on Saturday chiller theater or rainy afternoon schlock fests, surrounded by friends who are doubled over with laughter at the absurdly dated special effects and remarkable plots. Director Ray Kellogg's The Giant Gila Monster and The Killer Shrews have been knocked off, parodied, and, when the movies became part of the video public domain wasteland, two of the most owned titles on anyone's VHS shelf. While home audiences were laughing and having a good kitsch-filled time, what wasn't known was that the filmmaker they were making fun of had co-directed a movie with John Wayne that was one of the Duke's biggest successes, or that he had fashioned the action scenes for Tora Tora Tora, or that he had been a mainstay in the special effects department of 20th Century Fox for more than 20 years. How did a young sailor who was given his first opportunities in the movies by John Ford wind up directing a poisonous lizard and dogs dressed as killer shrews?
6 months ago, we managed to isolate the factor controlling size. 2 litters were born. 6 individuals we kept for study. They were about the size of buckshot at birth. But the rate of growth was abnormal. They continued to grow. They were mutants. But they inherited all the negative characteristics of their breed. Somehow they managed to escape.
Edgar Ray Kellogg's journey to the Gila Monster began in World War II with his meeting with Commander John Ford while working as a cameraman in the Navy's top-secret O.S.S. photographic unit, which the legendary director headed. Their work, recording the Battle of Midway and the bombing of Pearl Harbor, earned the unit military honors and 2 Academy Awards. Lieutenant Kellogg would make his own history as the cameraman who recorded the trials of Nazi war criminals in Nuremberg. After the war, Ford and Colonel Marion C. Cooper became producing partners, with one of their first productions being Mighty Joe Young, the more genteel version of Cooper's legendary King Kong. The crusty Ford always denied producing a guerrilla picture, but Mighty Joe was a hit, and helped solidify Ford and Cooper's partnership that would result in The Quiet Man and The Searchers.
Here's the kind of movie you're waiting to see as John Ford and Marion C. Cooper present Mighty Joe Young.
Following Mighty Joe Young, Ford made one of his most brutal films and the director's personal favorite, Wagon Master, starring Ben Johnson. Although we don't normally think of westerns as needing special photographic effects, Ford chose Ray Kellogg to fashion miniatures for the film rather than Ray Harryhausen or one of Willis O'Brien's assistants with whom he just worked. Whether Ford noted Kellogg's interest in special effects photography early on or just wanted to give the sailor from Iowa a break, Kellogg's excellent work on the classic Western opened the door for him at 20th Century Fox, Ford's old studio home. Kellogg's first work at Fox was to make miniatures and work on the optical special effects for director Robert Wise's science fiction masterwork, The Day the Earth Stood Still. From his first day at the studio in 1950, Ray Kellogg was working on Fox's biggest and best and would continue to do so until 1970.
I came here to give you these facts. But if you threaten to extend your violence, this earth of yours will be reduced to a burned-out cinder.
When Fox adapted Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth in 1959, there were a number of choices the special effects team, this time headed by Kellogg collaborator L.B. Abbott, had to make to bring the exploration of inner Earth to movie life. Massive sets were built and a star-studded cast, headed by James Mason and Pat Boone, assembled, but the miniatures needed for the undiscovered caverns and the depiction of the prehistoric monsters that dwelt there were still a problem. Kellogg had advised on the miniatures and optical effects, but stop motion for the dinosaurs was deemed too costly in both budget and time, even for this studio production. L.B. Abbott opted for real lizards shot in slow motion as the dinosaurs, and was nominated for an Academy Award for his work. The lizard solution was perfect for 20th Century Fox, but also for Ray Kellogg, who had been approached to direct 2 low-budget horror movies in Texas and needed manageable monsters.
In the enormity of the West, there are still vast and virtually unexplored regions, bleak and desolate, where no human ever goes and no life is ever seen. It is as though the land had been posted by God. It is in these lonely areas of impenetrable forest and dark shadows that the Gila monster still lives.
The money man who hired Ray Kellogg to direct The Giant Gila Monster and The Killer Shrews was radio and media mogul Gordon McClendon. Based out of Texas, McClendon had built a fortune by founding the Liberty Broadcasting Network in 1948, which were the first radio stations to broadcast baseball games live. His network included more than 400 stations, all of which were boosted by McClendon's invention of top 40 song lists, which swept the nation in the 50s. Record companies fought, and advertisers bought, their way into McClendon's favorite records list, expanding his fortunes and pointing him to the movies. McClendon owned drive-ins across Texas and decided to make his own monster movies, like the AIP double features he was already showing to carloads of teenagers. To make this happen, he turned to a man with special effects experience and Hollywood connections, Ray Kellogg. McClendon, actor-producer Ken Curtis, and Kellogg formed a triumvirate to make the low-budget films, but with old-school Hollywood pros in charge. And if they had a background of filming in Texas, so much the better.
Sure is beat down around here. Look at that.
What is it, Shay?
Looks like an animal of some sort drug something along here.
You mean a wild animal here?
Sure, could be anything, even a mountain lion. Oh, come on.
Kellogg and Curtis drafted top-shelf talent, who were not only friends but had long histories with the major studios. Writer Jay Sims was a story editor for Richard Boone and would soon be scripting The Rifleman, when he was given a few weeks to write both films and paid handsomely in cash. Cameraman Wilfred Klein came on board with amazing credits from Hollywood's golden age, including working on Gone with the Wind and The Adventures of Robin Hood, before photographing movies as diverse as The Tingler and Randolph Scott westerns. Kellogg's associate Ben Chapman oversaw both films before producing Flipper for TV and later Richard Donner's Superman. Ken Curtis, about to become iconic for his role as Festus on Gunsmoke, had been a musical mainstay on McClendon's stations as one of the Sons of the Pioneers, and audiences knew him as an actor in The Searchers. He was also John Ford's son-in-law and had worked in westerns shot in Texas for years. For The Killer Shrews, Kellogg and Curtis cast talented James Best as the lead. Kellogg and his company of pros shot with quick efficiency, delivering scenes for veteran editor Aaron Stell, who would also edit To Kill a Mockingbird, and composer Jack Marshall, who would write the eerie scores. Marshall was a guitar legend who also wrote all the music for the original Munsters TV series. McClendon and his son were credited as executive producers, with the rest of their families filling in small roles in both films.
Everybody in the world is scared to death of something.
That's evident. When they came at us last night, you knocked me down getting inside the fence.
It's just that I can't stand them.
And I've discovered something I can't stand.
All right. But I advise you not to mention it to anyone. I'm gonna complete these experiments with your father regardless of anything. Do you understand that? Nobody is gonna take this chance away from me.
The effects in Gila Monster included a miniature gas truck and hero Don Sullivan's hot rod, while Killer Shrews used makeup effects on the dogs to create the savage creatures. If not totally convincing, they were totally fun. Producer Ken Curtis added himself to the Shrews cast, alongside director Sidney Lumet's acting teacher father, Baruch. Everyone chipped in to help Kellogg and the McClendon family pull off their horror movies. Giant Gila Monster and The Killer Shrews were released in 1959 as the perfect Saturday night double feature, with bold poster and newspaper ads and a blanket radio campaign on McClendon's own stations across Texas and beyond. As Kellogg, Ken Curtis, and others wrapped up their work on the monster double features, they moved on to a production that was taking over Brackettville, Texas, John Wayne's The Alamo. Kellogg, who knew Wayne, pitched in on the optical effects and also the second unit work by his old commander John Ford, while Ken Curtis joined the cast, as did veteran stuntman Fred Graham, who worked in both monster films. Wayne's epic shoot required a lot of hands on deck and a lot of time. Kellogg had to return to 20th Century Fox, but would have a true collaboration with Duke years later.
All that I shall ever want to hold, or look upon, or be, or have is here now with you.
Remember that I want you to forget me, please.
Forget? How? I can never be more far away from you than this.
Now that Ray Kellogg had his own features behind him, including a McClendon-produced family movie, My Dog Buddy, his home studio leaned on him more and more to direct action and second unit sequences for Fox Films. Never was this more needed than in the mega production of Cleopatra. The legendary Joe Mankiewicz film, which brought Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton together, had a budget that was skyrocketing beyond reach or profit, and Kellogg was brought in to direct the scenes with the Roman army and consult on special effects. One of the most famous films ever made, and infamous for the budget that almost broke 20th Century Fox, Cleopatra's expansive visuals and massive size still amaze the eye. It remains one of Fox's most beautiful productions, with much credit going to Ray Kellogg for its glories.
Emergency. Batman speaking. Warning all of you to brace yourselves for big news.
The biggest.
Tell them, Robin.
Holy superlatives, Batman! It's really exciting. Soon, very soon, Batman and I will be catapulting right out of your TV sets and onto your theater screens.
That's right, Robin. Our first full-length motion picture feature in color opens a whole new world of thrills.
Batman was the feature-length version of the astonishingly successful TV show starring Adam West and Burt Ward. Shot quickly with Burgess Meredith, Frank Gorshin, and Lee Merriweather as the classic villains, Batman was filmed after the first TV season to boost upcoming episodes. The ploy worked, with young audiences going box office wild over what they saw in the feature, especially exciting scenes with the Batboat, directed by Kellogg. Kellogg orchestrated the beautiful traveling shows of horses and riders, as well as opticals, for the remake of John Ford's Stagecoach. The 1966 production, with Alex Cord in the role that made John Wayne immortal, co-starred Anne Margaret and Bing Crosby in a highly praised performance as the drunken doctor. Kellogg went from remaking Wayne to co-directing with the real thing when he took on the duties for the Green Beret, based on Robin Moore's best-selling novel. Because of schedule and cost overruns on the Alamo, Warner Brothers wanted Wayne to have a co-director for the film's complex battle scenes, and borrowed Kellogg from Fox for that purpose.
I found him. His name is Unsung, and I will give him to you.
When?
1 week from tonight, at the Ocosto plantation.
Do you trust her?
Of course. She's my brother's wife.
Filmed at Fort Benning, Georgia, and with the cooperation of the military, Kellogg supervised use of complex sets to simulate Vietnamese jungles and miniatures for some military equipment and their targets. Wayne's co-stars included Aldo Ray, Raymond St. Jacques as part of the military unit, and David Jansen as a reporter who must be convinced of the U.S. commitment in Vietnam. Jansen's attitude turns in favor of the war, which critics at the time couldn't believe and shouted their disapproval from newspapers and TV shows. The action highlights of the movie, including an incredible firefight orchestrated by Kellogg, coupled with the horrible reviews, meant audiences saw the film in droves. Released in 1968, The Green Berets was a true hit for Wayne and his co-director. Ray Kellogg barely had time to catch his breath and enjoyed his success before he was at war again.
Once two nations made war. Today they have collaborated to make a motion picture of unequaled magnitude and importance, recreating the actual events leading up to the day that changed the course of history.
Conceived to show both the American and Japanese sides of the 1941 Pearl Harbor attack, Tora 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 began production with director Richard Fleischer, who had been with Fox for decades and had just directed the hit The Boston Strangler, in charge of the American sequences. The iconic genius of Japanese cinema, Akira Kurosawa, would direct all of the scenes with the Japanese Air Force and their commanders. Kurosawa apparently couldn't fully adjust to the U.S. style of filming, and the production elements had to change, with the director being replaced. Tora 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 was the career highlight for Ray Kellogg, although he worked on some studio westerns before retiring. His old partner, Gordon McClendon, ended his producing career with the John Huston-directed prison camp film Victory, starring Sylvester Stallone and Michael Caine. Both men had come a long way from Gila monsters and the killer shrews. But because of a slip-up with copyright, the giant Gila monster and the killer shrews seem to have an eternal life, as camp and as fun horror movies. But they also exist as a monument to the efforts by Ray Kellogg and some of Hollywood's most seasoned pros to make a pair of monster movies that are still being enjoyed by audiences around the world.
In 24 hours, there'll be one shrew left on the island, and he'll be dead of starvation. An excellent example of overpopulation.
Well, you know something, Doctor?
What's that?
I'm not going to worry about overpopulation just yet.